Usually when children go missing, parents are on the edge of a breakdown. The last thing anyone wants to believe is that they had something to do with it. The circumstances in which this 12-year-old was found made it even harder to follow the truth. Did both parents really know that he was right beneath their feet? How did the police searches not find him to begin with? What really happened for those 11 days? You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, and today's case is quite a speculated upon one. It was very big in the national news and with Nancy Grace many years ago. It is one that has a lot of controversy around it, and nobody really knows exactly what was going on for those 11 days or even prior to that. So I will let you listen and gather your own thoughts and leave them for me down below. And before we dive into this video, I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever thought about becoming an FBI agent? I feel like a lot of us who watch true crime have thought about it once in our lives, and one of the best things you can do to become one is to learn a second language. Me llamo Brooke, and I am learning Spanish right now from Babbel. So thank you to Babbel for sponsoring this video. Babbel is actually one of the top language learning apps in the world, and it makes it super easy because they do it through real life conversations that makes it practical to go out into the world and to actually speak the language with others who know it. Whether you want to become an FBI agent, or whether you want to just be able to communicate better with those around you, or if you have a New Year's Eve goal to try something new or learn something, I think overall being able to communicate with more people is so beneficial, and Babbel makes it seriously so easy. So if you want to try it out, there is actually a 60% off your subscription with my link down below. It's an incredible deal. Now let's get back to the story. You see, it was 2014 in Michigan, and the Bothell family lived in Detroit. This was parents who were 47-year-old Charles IV and the stepmother, his wife, who was Monique Dillard Bothell. And they had a 12-year-old named Charlie, who was Charles V, but he went by Charlie, and also a 4-year-old boy and a 10-month-old girl. This was Charlie's half-siblings, and they lived in the 1300 block of Nicollet. This was in a condo building, and the father, Charles, owned a business where he was a registered nurse, and those who knew them said that they were a very quiet, normal family. Charlie was said to spend time with both his biological father, Charles, as well as his mother. However, at this time, he was said to spend most of his time with his father and stepmother. On June 14th, they would be thrust into the spotlight in the worst of ways. You see, Charlie's parents, his father and stepmother, had reported him missing, and the search began. His father, Charles, told police that they had last seen Charlie at the home and that he was working out. He stopped to go to the bathroom, and he never came back. Detroit Police Chief James Craig was in charge of the search, and the next day the public was informed and in fact asked to help in the search for Charlie. Investigators were asking different neighbors who had surveillance cameras if they could see that footage. The tapes were obtained, and the footage did show that Charlie was outside that June 14th taking out the garbage. However, after that, he was not seen again. Now, Charles and Monique claimed that Charlie could have run away because he had done so previously. It was 2 years ago he left the home, but the police found him just walking around the neighborhood about 3 hours later. This time, on June 14th, he had refused to do one of his workouts and his chores that day, and his stepmother told Charlie that she was going to tell his father if he didn't do so, and so that's why he may have run off. Now, 4 days since the disappearance, so on June 18th, investigators brought different dogs, cadaver dogs, tracking dogs, to the family home. They were going around the area hoping to find a trail to track where Charlie may have gone off to. Investigators inside the home found nothing as to where Charlie could have been. They searched every crevice, including the basement, and found absolutely no sign of him. So by the 19th, Sergeant Paul Pestmark was put in charge, and investigators were not ruling out the possibility of homicide at this point. On June 24th, a search warrant was issued, and this was for the Bothell residence. Now, Charlie's father, had said that 3 days prior he had undergone a polygraph test because that was requested by the police, and then it went on to the FBI, and he said that he took this test, but the results were inconclusive. While investigators searched this home, Charles appeared on Nancy Grace. It had been 11 days since his son had gone missing, and he was begging the public for help in bringing him home. Suddenly, Nancy Grace got very serious and began to tell Charles that Charlie had been found. And I will let you watch that play out.
Charlie, we're getting reports that your son has been found in your basement. Sir? Mr. Bothell, are you?
What?
Yeah, we are getting reports that your son has been found alive in your basement.
What?
How could your son be alive in your basement?
Oh, shit. I have no idea.
Now, this is just a report that we are hearing out of Detroit that we're trying to confirm.
God,
everybody
please.
in New York, please get on it. Let me know when we get Charlie Langton from WWJ. Sir, did you check your basement?
I checked my basement, the FBI checked my basement, the Detroit police checked my basement, my wife checked my basement. I've been down there several times. We've all been checking. God, they brought dogs, everything. Everybody is searched. What? Okay, my son.
Have you checked your cell phone?
My cell phone is dead. I actually getting down here, I left it in the car charging because it had died on me. Okay.
Charlie had been found in his own family home, though he was in the basement. And this basement at the condo building was actually downstairs through a tunnel, and then they had different storage closets, and that's what they were considered to be their basements. But investigators found him behind a barricade of boxes as well as a 5-pound drum. Police Chief James Craig said that Charlie was okay. He spoke to them. He only said, though, that he was hungry, not much else. He would also claim that they were a bit confused because they didn't know if Charlie had been there that entire time. Like I said, they had searched the residence, they had searched with the dogs, they had searched inside the home, they had searched in that basement, and nobody ever alerted to there being anyone inside.
And he appeared to be hiding back there, or you say he could not have erected this little hiding place by himself?
In my judgment, based on what was described, I didn't see what it looked like prior to my arrival, but there's no way he could have erected this makeshift area of concealment, I'll call it. He certainly was excited to see us. I had a chance to actually talk and embrace Charlie. Very excited to see us. I mean, this is a great story. And this was, in fact, the 4th time we've been to this location. And one of our visits, we came with a cadaver dog. So we're not certain that Charlie was here doing those visits, not certain at all. Because the question I would have, how could we miss? Certainly we know when there's a missing and we go into a family home, we check places that children can hide. Sometimes if children are afraid, they will hide and conceal themselves. But for whatever reason, I don't know what it looked like the first several visits, but certainly this time, the detective who was in that area thought something was strange and began to moving, and Charlie didn't alert his presence.
It was only when you found him.
It was only, and you could see that he was nervous but excited and glad to see the police.
Describe his condition. What was his condition? Like, did he look like he was hungry or what?
Well, he indicated he was hungry. Certainly I saw evidence that there was food around the area where he was hiding, but he seemed to be both nervous and excited. In terms of his medical condition, I certainly, he's being medically evaluated now, so I don't know what the doctors are going to find during that examination, but he appeared fine when I saw him.
His parents aren't here right now, correct?
That's correct.
The father told us he was going to go and do an interview with Nancy Grace a little while ago. The mother, once we told her that you guys were looking into the possibility of a homicide, the stepmother, I should say, she took off. Is there any reason to believe that some adult had to know Charlie was in that house?
I will tell you, we're not ruling that out. it would be hard for me to sit here and tell you that someone didn't know that Charlie was there. But I can't say definitively. I came here for one specific reason. I wanted to see and I wanted to touch Charlie. I find a lot of things odd, but you know, my opinion doesn't count at this point. But the one thing I will say, I'm excited that Charlie is alive.
Charlie was then taken by police first to go get McDonald's since he said he was hungry, and then he went to the hospital for evaluation. And at this point, the stepmother actually couldn't be located. She had also allegedly refused to take a polygraph test, but Charlie's father at this time was returning home from that Nancy Grace episode to news reporters in his yard, and he would give them another interview, which I'll play for you.
No, I didn't know that he was in the basement. I searched, my wife searched. We've had dozens of police officers, FBI agents here, dogs. We've all been searching for my son. You know, so any intimation that I knew that he was in there somehow, it's absurd.
Has he ever hidden down there before?
No, he hasn't.
We heard that your ex-wife may have been hiding him down there from you and feeding him.
That's absurd. And my ex-wife did not take off. The FBI or the task force was here executing a search warrant. They forced my wife to leave. I was here. You guys were here. They stated we could not be in the house while the search was being executed. That was a decision of law enforcement, not the decision of my wife. For anybody to imply that I somehow knew that my son was in the basement, it's absurd and it's wrong. I love my son. I'm glad that he's home and he's going to have the great future that he deserves to have.
Well, no one
Period.
There was deeper concern, perhaps, about a homicide.
Yeah, man, you broke my heart with that, man.
But tell me about your range of emotions based on what the police were
Man, they thought my son was dead, man.
Have you seen your son yet?
No, I haven't.
Do you know where he
Where's
is?
your wife? Where's
No,
your
I
wife at
don't.
right now?
No, I don't.
Where's
My
your
wife,
wife?
she left. They wouldn't let her in the house. But I want to see my son.
Okay. Okay.
Your current wife might have been keeping him down there and hiding him perhaps from you.
That is absurd.
Does your ex-wife
That
have
is
access?
absurd.
Did she say that she's told you point blank that she does not know where he is?
Yes, she has. Period. My wife wouldn't do that.
Would you have
Simple as
noticed
that.
would you have noticed any disturbing of the property? I mean, you would have noticed he was coming in and out, wouldn't you?
I can think I would have, but I would think that I would have noticed that he had a Twitter account that I didn't know about, which the FBI told me, and some, additional money that they found. So, I mean, as a parent, you do everything you can to keep as close a track on your children as you can.
Did he have a key? Could he have gone in and out?
We had extra keys around. I mean, so it's possible. We have extra keys.
Are any of them missing at this point? Have you looked at that?
That hadn't crossed my mind.
A lot of people
It
were
hadn't.
talking earlier about the whole lie detector situation. Your wife declined to take one with Detroit police. You said yes to the FBI.
The FBI did not ask my wife. Agent Scott Willer, Special Agent Scott Willer, after I declined to take the lie detector with the Detroit police because of the way the lieutenant treated me and my family, the agent said, well, okay, what about with the FBI? And I said, yes, absolutely, because I didn't do anything to my son, and I believe my son is going to be found safe and alive, and I want him home. And where exactly he was found, what were the subject? Was he in the drum?
No, he was behind a container, but they said he was
Okay, we have
behind
all
that
kinds of
and was
stuff.
nervous,
Crouched
but
behind
he
Okay,
didn't see police.
you know what? After disappearing like that, I'm sure he would be nervous. I mean, of course. I mean, why would he not be nervous? Simple as that. My son, he's obviously going to need some counseling. He still needs to get his education. He needs to move forward with his life. So I'm going to do everything that I can to help my son get his life back on track, which is what I've been doing right along.
The evidence that was already taken out of that house.
And see, evidence is implying that we did something wrong, just like people were accusing me of being a murder. It's only evidence if there was some crime committed. No crime committed here. That's not
Could there
what
have been
happened.
any other sort of abuse? There was blood evidence that was taken out of that house.
Yeah. There was no abuse of my son. There was no, they said that there was evidence of a murder. That was nonsense then, and it's nonsense
What do
now.
you think?
On June 26, Charlie was cleared. He was said to be medically fine, though he had marks on his upper body, and he wouldn't actually be able to speak to his father nor stepmother at this time. They kept him away, and he was sent to his biological mother, who was named Africa. He was being interviewed by police as well as the FBI as to what really happened during those 11 days, and at the same time, his stepmother was actually actually found and taken into custody for violating a previous parole. This had nothing to do with the missing boy. She was actually on probation for 2 years for a unrelated misdemeanor gun charge, and she was found to have a gun, and so she was given a $5,000 bond and had to wear an ankle monitor to be released, and her husband Charles picked her up. After about 2 weeks of healing, Charlie's mother, biological mother, who was taking care of him at this point, said that he was finally beginning to laugh again, and that getting his smile was the best thing ever after it wasn't happening for so long. And she was saying that it will take time, but the love of his family will get him back to normal. And his aunt Alicia was saying that she has spoken to him a lot, but he really doesn't go into what happened to him during that time. She said all he's really doing is playing computer games, watching superhero films, and their family, the mother's family, said they didn't have a clue that Charlie was being abused, and if it's true, then Charles and Monique need to be severely punished. Now, Charles continued to deny any involvement with Charlie's disappearance or abuse in the home. You see, there were many speculating that the mark on his upper chest was actually due to abuse, and that this all kind of led to him being in the basement. Charlie was at his biological mother's house, but his siblings were actually taken into foster care and then were given to relatives at this point. But the parents were granted only holiday and weekend visitations with them. Now, this is where it ended for about 10 months until April of 2015, when Charles and Monique were arrested and charged with torture and second-degree child abuse. At this trial, Charlie would get on the stand and he would testify. Now being about 13, 14 years old, he would testify that his stepmother, Monique, had forced him to go down in that basement, cleared a section for him to stay in, and told him to stay quiet and not to come out. He said that his home was abusive in general, that he was required to exercise twice daily and was hit with a PVC pipe by his father if he didn't follow the rules. Now, a PVC pipe was found inside of their home, allegedly with blood on it, and that medical examination that he had, where he had that mark on his upper chest, did match the PVC pipe. Charlie would explain that he was so depressed living there that he once attempted suicide, and he had also run away previously as well. But he said that that day he vanished, he was in trouble for not completing one of his mandatory workouts, and that his stepmother was threatening him, saying that she was going to call his father, and that also that she knew where sharp knives were and that she could make him disappear.
Sometimes she would punch me, or I got choked once.
By her or someone else?
Her.
Charlie said that once Monique put him in the basement behind this barricade of boxes, he then heard her call his father and tell him that he was missing. He said that all those times that police searched, he remained hidden because he didn't know what would happen if he was found. He said he didn't know if anyone would believe him, that his stepmother had threatened to kill him before, and that she did come down during those 11 days and give him things like protein shakes and dry cereal to eat. But he also said that during that time when no one was home, he would sneak upstairs during those 11 days and he would get food as well as go to the bathroom. Though there have been people who said that there's a bathroom in that downstairs basement area that he could have used. Now, the torture charge could have resulted in life sentences, though this was ultimately dismissed because Judge Shannon Holmes said
the doctor testified on direct examination as well as cross-examination that she made her determination that the child had been tortured, and she used the word tortured, even though it's not a legal term. She said that it was based on her review of the medical history of the child, which has been determined by this court to be incomplete. She said she made her determination based on the medical records of the child, which has been determined by this court that those records were incomplete. She also indicated that she made her determination based on interviews, and the interviews were Kids Talk, FBI, different interviews, and just on some of the cross-examination of Charlie himself, this court finds that those interviews were inconsistent. She specifically stated that Charlie had no friends, no girlfriend, and that he was homeschooled. However, the testimony on the record by Charlie himself indicates the total opposite. Charlie testified that he did spend weekends with his mother, that he did have the opportunity to hang out with his cousins, that he did go to the park on occasions, that he did leave the state and spend time with his grandfather in another state. He testified in one of his interviews that he had, anytime he went away from the house on Nicolette, that it was never unmonitored by the defendants. Well, Charlie's testimony on the stand contradicted that interview, because he did go to his mother and to his cousins and to other places, and he was not always accompanied by the defendants. And it's clear from the record, from Charlie himself, that he was homeschooled. He was having problems in school. He was not making the grade. He was having behavioral issues. And so the decision was made to homeschool. I certainly can't conclude that the fact that the child was homeschooled is a part of isolation for some cruel or some kind of cruel intention to torture this child. The doctor went on to state that she made her ruling or her determination based on the fact that Charlie had been deprived of water and food. However, during his testimony, Charlie indicated at first, he said that defendant Monique Bothwell, brought him food in the basement. He later testified that he would actually sneak upstairs and get food. And then in his FBI interview, he said that Monique Bothwell never brought him any food. He totally did not tell the truth. It's more than just a child being confused and being afraid. They are totally inconsistent stories. What was even more glaring with respect to the testimony about the deprivation of food and water, where the hospital said at the time of admission, and I quote, well nourished. No one made a finding that this child had been deprived of any water or any food. It says it. Nobody brought it out, but I told you all, I read all of the records at the hospital. Charlie stated on more than one occasion that he had not had a bowel movement for 10 days. While this may not be important to anyone else, it was important to this court because Mr. Bothwell, Charlie Bothwell, the complaining witness, got on this stand and testified that he would sneak upstairs and use the bathroom. Again, this is more than just a child forgetting something, being nervous, totally inconsistent stories, and I could not believe what he said. I just don't believe him. I don't believe that he was in that basement, and as a part of the preliminary examination, I am required to assess credibility. It doesn't get to the finder of fact if I find the witness to be wholly incredible, which is what I found this witness to be with respect to his confinement in that basement. I don't believe that he was there 10 days. I don't believe that they restricted his movement. I don't believe that the police were there and they did this thorough investigation. The FBI, the evidence recovery team, the trace team, the dogs, and nobody found little Charlie in the basement of his home.
Hearing this, Monique and Charles were said to hug their lawyers, and they were crying, and the bond for them was then cut from $500,000 to $50,000, but they were ordered to wear ankle monitors if they were released, though I don't believe they ever were. They were also told at this point to go no contact with their children. Now, the court also heard texts that had been found between Charles and Monique that very day he vanished. Around 7:20 p.m., they began talking about his exercise and the fact that he needed to do 4,000 revolutions on the elliptical and that he hadn't done so. And Charles would say, wow, we need to get this money and I'm going to gear him towards completing one of these law schools that I'm about to attend. He lacks the discipline and core character and drive to be a doctor, nurse, scientist, period. Maybe time and continued effort may help, but I have no reason to be hopeful at this point. Let's get this money and get him gone. Now, the defense claimed that by get this money and get him gone, they meant that they were going to be sending him to a boarding school, but they had to obtain some money first. And they were also explaining that Charlie was actually a very troubled child who lied, stole, and got into fights at school. And that's why his parents were discussing sending him there for his behavior. He was also said to be homeschooled due to that behavior. His aunt would say that Charlie had been sent to his father's house from his biological mother's house because of his behavior, that his grades were declining. They just wanted to nip it in the bud. And so they really thought that him being at his father's home would put him on the right track. His father would say that Charlie really did thrive under more of a structured routine, and so that is what they did for him. A note was found and presented by the defense, which was allegedly written by Charlie from 5 months earlier to when he had gone missing. In the note, Charlie allegedly admitted to using bleach and window cleaner on the dishes in order to make his family sick so he could live with his mom instead. However, he would claim that he was told to write those words by his stepmother. Now, Charlie would admit in court that he had lied to the police when he had run away the first time.
Guy with gray hair held you in a basement?
I said I was in the tunnel, not the basement.
Oh, the guy with, the guy with gray hair kept you in the tunnel. Remember that?
Yes.
And that was a lie?
Yes.
You made up that a guy with gray hair actually held you in a tunnel, kidnapped you and held you in a tunnel, right?
There was also rumors about him starting a house fire the year prior, but he had denied this and he has not been linked to it at all. And it was found and confirmed by Charlie that the family doctor had wanted him to lose some weight, which was the reason for the exercise program that his father had him on. However, the prosecution was calling this extreme and unreasonable, and that Charles was a warden and Charlie was a prisoner in the home. The defense claimed that he chose to hide from his parents and the police in that basement for 11 days. The prosecution said that he was forced to do so. Now, Charles had another adult daughter, and she would basically tell everybody that her father was being unfairly depicted and that he would never do anything to hurt his kids, and that he made all of his kids exercise to control weight because diabetes ran in the family. She said she remembers running a mile every morning, but she lost weight and she was happy and healthy. A neighbor claimed that Charlie came and went from the home as he pleased, and even claimed that during those 11 days, the neighborhood had seen him out playing basketball during the time he was supposed to be missing, though these sightings were never confirmed and there was no surveillance footage ever seen of this. The basement door of these condos were actually locked most of the time. However, during this time, the door was allegedly unlocked due to residents needing to use the dumpster inside because the dumpster outside had a whole bunch of buildup and there was no more room. And so they were allowing residents to just come into the basement. And some have theorized that this meant that Charlie could have been coming and going through that basement door, whereas his parents didn't see him and where he was just, doing whatever he pleased. It's also theorized this could be why the police never found him before then, because he was out during the times that they did the searches. Now, Monique allegedly took a plea deal with no jail time. However, the details were never made public, and it was also claimed that her record could be cleared after 6 months if she stayed out of the legal system, and I'm not sure why. They seem to vanish after 5 months and 2 weeks, and nobody can see that she ever had a criminal record. One spokesperson claimed it was illegal to discuss the reasoning for this, and so we may never know exactly how or why this occurred. Now, Charles IV wasn't going to take a plea deal, or so he told everybody. However, on January 19th, 2016, he would accept one, and he said basically he had no money to fight for justice and to continue to clear his name, so he was sentenced to 18 months of probation with anger management classes. He was also ordered to have no contact with Charlie, and he said that this whole process broke his family and his finances, and it was time to just move forward and start rebuilding his life. The prosecution said in light of everything that has happened, they thought this was an appropriate resolution so that Charlie could just move on with his life. But a month later, Charles IV would file a lawsuit against Nancy Grace and the Time Warner Inc. for defamatory statements made about him. He said they broadcasted false information about him, the case, the evidence, and allegations against him. Charles said he was forced to shut down his business and lost his job due to this, but ultimately this case was dismissed. Now, Charlie would be around 21 years old today, and not much is known about his life since this incident. What do you think about this wild case? Where do you think the truth lies? Did both parents really know? Did only one? did none and Charlie was just hiding out in the basement. It just seems to me what Charlie was saying was that his stepmother was the reason he was in the basement, and she ended up getting no time at all. What in the world actually occurred? I mean, he admitted he could go out and get more food. Do you think that he wasn't there the whole time? He kind of just roamed about, and then when they found him, he had just come back to that spot? There's just so many questions, and the reactions that his father gave on camera and the interviews he gave are just so incredibly strange. But in some ways, he does look like a distraught dad, and other ways he looks like he is absolutely faking everything. And we don't really have much on the stepmother. We don't have interviews. We don't have her personal statements about what happened. You know, we don't know much about her side or what she would say or how she would act. So I just love to hear all of your thoughts. Don't forget you can get 60% off your Babbel subscription with my link down below. So don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.